This week's topic is all about the immune system. And the purpose of your immune system is to fight off any infection, and specifically the immune system is going to fight off pathogens. So a pathogen is any disease-causing organism, and that's the main purpose of the immune system, to kill off these pathogens. The immune system works closely with another system in your body called the lymphatic system. And the job of the lymphatic system is to circulate the immune cells throughout your body. So this first video, we're going to do an overview of the lymphatic system and what it does for you. All right, so like I said, the immune system, its job is to fight infections and also cancer. Now, in order for those immune cells to get to different parts of your body in order to fight off these pathogens, you need these special parts of your body called lymphatic organs. And lymphatic organs are really where your immune cells, which are your white blood cells, are hanging out. So you can see you have lymphatic organs everywhere in your body, from your face to your armpits to your stomach. Okay, so they're all over the place. Now, in order for immune cells, which I keep saying immune cells, what I really mean is white blood cells, which are the cells that are going to fight off pathogens. So your white blood cells need a way to circulate and find those pathogens. And the way they do this is they circulate in lymphatic vessels. And anytime you see a lymphatic vessel in a picture, for some reason they always show lymphatic vessels as being green in textbooks, but they're not really green in real life. They don't have a color like this, okay? But you can see that lymphatic vessels are circulating around in your body. They are very closely associated with capillaries in your circulatory system. So fluid will leak from your capillaries into your lymphatic vessels, and then that fluid can transport throughout your body. And that special fluid that's circulating in your lymphatic vessels, that's called lymph. Okay, lymph contains tissue fluid. It's very rich in white blood cells, and they're all over your body. And in these pictures you can see the lymphatic vessels throughout the body, and you see these little circular things in certain parts of the body. These are supposed to represent lymph nodes. So lymph nodes are little patches of lymphatic tissue where a lot of your white blood cells come in contact with pathogens. You can see you have lymph nodes in your armpit. You have quite a few in your neck area and in your groin area, but they're in other places as well. Now, there's two very important organs that are part of the lymphatic system, and these are your primary lymphatic organs. So the reason they call these primary is they are essential organs. You could never live without these organs. They are essential for life. And without them, your immune system would fail. You would immediately die from a harmless disease. So the two primary lymphatic organs are the red bone marrow and the thymus gland. Let's talk first about the red bone marrow. So the job of the red bone marrow is to produce blood cells. All blood cells, all of them, are made in bone marrow. They're made in special cells in your bone marrow called hematopoietic stem cells. These cells are essential for producing every type of blood cell in your body, including red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets that we've talked about. All three of these, they're all made in these hematopoietic stem cells in your red bone marrow. Now, young children from birth, most of their bone contains this red bone marrow. So almost all of their bone cells are constantly making blood. But as we get older, most of our bones become yellow marrow, which don't produce blood cells anymore. The only place where we find red bone marrow as an adult is in your skull, in your rib cage, but the most important place is at the end of these long bones here. Okay, so that at the ends of your humerus and your femur, that's where you're going to find great red bone marrow that's producing a lot of blood cells. Now, the key thing about bone marrow in terms of the immune system, you have two really important cells in your immune system. They're called B cells, which we're going to talk about later, and T cells. Both your B cells and your T cells, they both are made, obviously all white blood cells are made in the bone marrow. And then later on, we're going to see that the B cells also mature in the bone marrow. Okay, so that's what the B means. B cells means they mature in the bone marrow. B for bone marrow. That's your first primary lymphatic organ. Your second primary lymphatic organ is called the thymus gland. Okay, so this is a gland. It's found right here in your chest, right above your heart. And like I said, you could never survive without your thymus gland. It's an essential organ. When we're young children, the thymus gland is very large, but as we age, it shrinks. It gets smaller and smaller. The job of the thymus gland is, remember I told you in the last slide there's B cells and T cells. T cells mature. That means they live after they are born, they move to the thymus gland, and that's where they mature. So T stands for thymus. And we're going to talk about the importance of these T cells later. Now you also have, in addition to red bone marrow and thymus gland, several secondary lymphatic organs. Secondary, indicating they're not essential. They're still very important in helping development and fighting off pathogens, but they're not as essential as the primary. So you could maybe live without some of these secondary lymphatic organs. But the problem is, if you get one of these organs removed, your immune system could be weakened. So you could have a little bit of a weaker immune system because you're missing out on some of these essential organs where white blood cells are going to meet with pathogens. The most important secondary lymphatic organs are your lymph nodes and your spleen. A few others include your tonsils, adenoids, and your appendix. So like we talked about before, lymph nodes are little patches of lymphatic tissue. You find a lot of them in your neck, your armpit, and your groin region. Now, these are really important patches of white blood cells that are going to come together with pathogens. So when a pathogen enters the body, it often gets into the circulatory system and travels to a lymph node. If you've ever been sick before, you might have noticed your lymph nodes get a little swollen when you're feeling sick, and that's because there's enhanced number of white blood cells and pathogens that are in those lymph nodes that are then a lot of fighting occurring, okay? So these are really essential to fighting off the pathogen. Now, another important organ is your spleen. The main job of the spleen is to filter blood. So if you look at your spleen, here it is located right here under your heart, okay? Above your intestines though. Now the spleen has two main segments. The outside of the spleen, it's red here, and this is called the red pulp. The red pulp is going to filter blood. It's going to filter blood, looking for any pathogens that don't belong in the blood, any junk that's there, and also going to get rid of any old, worn out red blood cells. Inside the spleen, there's white pulp, and as you can guess, this is where there's a lot of white blood cells that are there fighting infection and also fighting cancer. So spleen is very important to your immune system. But some people get an infection in their spleen and they may have to get it removed. You can live without the spleen, but you might be immunocompromised. Okay, so here's a new term. Immunocompromised means you're more susceptible to infection, or the immune system is weakened. So I'll give you an example. There's an illness you might have heard of called mono, and mono is caused by a virus called the Epstein-Barr virus, or EBV. Some people, when they get mono, the spleen will enlarge because there's a lot of pathogens fighting with white blood cells, so the spleen could enlarge. It could actually rupture, all right, and that's really dangerous if the spleen ruptures. So some people might actually have to get their spleen removed if there's certain infections or if a rupture happens.